For millions of years, our planet has nurtured the only life we know to exist. From the earliest forms evolved a miraculous array of creatures, great and small. All living beings are ruled by the immutable forces of nature. The ability to adapt is the key to survival. Only one species dares challenge the natural order. Perhaps it will be recorded one day that man's fatal flaw was the foolhardy belief that he, among all living creatures, could ultimately dominate nature. Not content to use his powers of reason and physical dexterity for mere adaptation, man takes the biosphere into his own hands. Though he celebrates life in his art and science, he threatens many species with extinction. Though he builds ingenious vessels, he also poisons the oceans. Though he creates cathedrals, he also builds monuments to waste and destruction.
I do not look forward to the future with any great pleasure, and I keep hoping against hope that mankind will prove to be sane as a whole and will do voluntarily what is necessary to prevent destruction.
The first priority is obviously to preserve humankind on this planet, because if we don't preserve them, all the rest is perfectly irrelevant. You know, people want to talk about what will marriage be like in the year 2050, or how the developing countries will be faring. Well, if they aren't here, it's very irrelevant. So that the first issue, an overpowering issue, is the continued survival of humankind.
In many parts of Europe, England, for example, there are magnificent arbors, enormous stately trees, which have been planted 200 or 300 years earlier by people who had no chance of ever seeing the results of their planting. They did it for the future.
The man on the moon adventure didn't require any real changes in human attitudes or the human spirit. And I think that's what's required to solve our problems here on Earth.
Don't you think the picture, the actual photograph of the planet?
Probably the single biggest benefit that came out of the space program. I'm glad you reminded me, because there you saw it, a little blue, white, and brown and green ball, and that's all we've got. And it really ought to be enough.
All life forms have their futures determined by biologic imprint. We alone dream of the future. More important, we have the power to cast it in the mold of our visions. It is our children and their children who will fill the pages of future histories. It is they who will inherit the fragile promise of life. As old as man himself are his dreams of leaving his earthbound existence and taking flight. In 1902, Georges Méliès filmed his fantasy of a trip to the moon. images of the future are almost synonymous with fanciful ventures of flight.
Towards the end of the 19th century, Jules Verne wrote a story, an account, in which he attempted to predict what transportation techniques would be present in about 1950. And the most he could imagine was enormous balloons with elegant gondolas in red velvet crossing the United States from New York to San Francisco in only a period of a few weeks. And Jules Verne, of course, was a very daring thinker. Now, his problem was he could not imagine heavier-than aircraft because they had not been invented, and everyone said there could not be such a thing. What I'm saying is that the technological developments that cannot now be predicted will probably dominate the future of 100, 200 years from now, and therefore no one is in a position to make a reliable prediction.
Icarus fell to earth, his wings scalded by the sun. Leonardo wanted to emulate the grace of birds with a flying machine. Over the centuries, countless designs were conceived. Countless efforts failed. But the fruits of his imagination were not to be denied. Not far into the 20th century, man lifted his sights to the heavens and flew. Once gravity was overcome, there seemed no limit to advances in aviation. 50 years after the Wright brothers, the space age was born. Only a handful of men have gazed back at the Earth from space. One such man is astronaut Rusty Schweickart, a modern-day pioneer forging a trail into the future. I was invited to accompany Rusty on one of his training flights in a NASA jet. I thought the sky's an ideal place to get this astronaut's perspective on space travel and the future.
Wind calm, clear for takeoff.
Roger, thank you. Okay, all set?
All set.
All right, we'll run the engines up here. Looks good.
Start by 5100 radioing tower.
The afterburners.
55008, visibility 6 miles in haze, wind calm.
Okay, everything working copacetic.
55008, that is correct.
Well, it's a pretty nice day, except a little hazy still.
Yeah, no dry clouds.
Yeah, that'll burn off probably by the time we get back in.
Where are we going?
Well, I think we'll go down off the coast here, just south of Galveston. We've got an area down there that we use for doing acrobatics with the aircraft, which we try to do a fair amount of before a flight, just to get you accustomed to unusual accelerations and things for the inner ear, which is the balance mechanism.
What made you decide to go into the space program anyway?
I'd been interested in flying since I was a little kid and watched airplanes, and it's a little bit like being a mountain climber and seeing a higher mountain left to conquer. And
Yeah.
besides that, I've always been interested in space travel and the concept of moving off the planet and understanding a little bit better. A sort of intellectual curiosity. So the two combined very nicely when the space program started. And I
North 920,
You want to do a roll?
yeah, let's do one. Pick up a little speed here. Yeah, the world looks different from that perspective.
It certainly does.
Nice and easy. Go around another time here. We would almost always eat our breakfast over the Middle East. Our orbits took us along trajectories that crossed over the Mediterranean area. And you can't help but think about the fact that there you are looking at the cradle of civilization, the origins of Western history, with Rome and Greece and Carthage and etc. And yet at the same time, down there across an invisible border are people shooting one another.
Yeah.
And we remarked, if you could only take people and transport them up there and put their head up against a window, you know, sort of hold them by the ears and put their nose up against a window and say, look at what you're doing. Why? In my own view, Philippe, there's an even more important contribution that has been, and I think will continue to be made by the space program, and that is a basic change in consciousness. I think that stepping off the planet and looking back at it and seeing the planet as a whole has and can create a different perspective, a different way of looking at the Earth. And I tend to think of it as a new consciousness which looks more at the Earth as a living entity, and we're a part of that. And I think that we have to understand our relationship to that sphere of life which we call the planet Earth.
Who were you up there?
That's an interesting question, because to me, I mentioned it during my EVA when I was outside. I had about 5 minutes to really just look and think about what was happening and what I was taking part in. And in looking down at the Earth from that perspective, there's no way in the world that you can look at it and feel that you've earned that privilege. There have been so many accidents all through your life, you know, coincidences, decisions that were made that were trivial at the time, which brought you to the present place. You know, there's absolutely no way in which you set your goal and earn it or deserve where you are. And that is, I was the representative of humanity at that time and in that place with that experience, and almost as if I were the sensing element of humanity. And from that feeling, a tremendous feeling of humility and responsibility, and it became an obligation at that point for me to bring back that experience in a way in which it was meaningful to other people, so that the experience itself was broader than just one individual Rusty Schweikart. Let's see now. Philippe, I'll tell you what. Why don't you take over the flying?
Okay.
Parallel the coastline.
Okay.
If you want to pull up and do a roll, go ahead.
Like this?
Yeah.
And now?
Yeah, but do it fast. Okay.
Okay.
Outbound 260, frequency change approved.
Okay, have you got your pins in, so you're on the ground?
Pins are in.
It's a very simple matter to hop down from one step to the next.
In July 1969, perhaps a billion or more years after life appeared on Earth, Homo sapiens leaves terra firma and walks about on the surface of the moon.
Backwards.
By any measure, it is the event of the millennium. It is a tribute to technology and to the human imagination. But above all, it signifies the capacity of man to achieve what is seemingly impossible. Space exploration has already taught us that life on Earth is a rare and precious gift. Early probes for life in our solar system have proved negative. Still, it seems unlikely that we are alone in the universe. Despite our failure to discover life beyond our atmosphere, our curious nature demands that we question the mysteries of the cosmos. Where spacecraft have not traveled, the eye of the telescope often can. At Palomar Observatory, we spoke with astronomer Jesse Greenstein.
The astronomer is very accustomed to trying to find out a great deal about very remote parts of the universe. And to do this, he's gotten used to working with very little light, using large telescopes to increase that, and using that light as fully as possible to squeeze every bit of information out of it. We've used the resources of modern technology in space to study distant stars and galaxies and even quasars. We've had to use all these technologies because we've never been able to get a sample of a star. You can't go out there in a spaceship the distance of 1 billion light years and back at the speed of light.
What is the place of mankind and the Earth in this vast and awesome cosmos in which we are embedded? Are there beings, intelligent beings on other planets? What is the origin of life, the origin of the solar system, the origin, nature, and fate of the universe? Those are very big questions. Well, we are just on the verge of being able to approach and answer many of those questions. But the only way we can do that, apart from making things up in philosophical speculation, the only way we can really find out is with astronomy and space science. I consider that another most important aspect of space technology, that it has the promise of answering the deepest questions which human beings have ever asked.
Space technology also serves us here on Earth. Constantly circling our planet, Earth resources satellites take the pulse of our oceans. Like a microscope in space, satellites continually scan the Earth's surface, beaming information to stations on the ground. Satellite photographs are vital tools in charting pollution, forecasting weather, discovering mineral deposits, and monitoring the health of our global environment. The newest phase of space exploration is the Space Shuttle, a reusable craft that will be making round trips into space. The shuttle takes off vertically like a rocket, but lands like conventional aircraft. The screen there is showing me the real speed.
Now the pilot can fly this the same way.
I sat in the simulated cockpit of the Space Shuttle at NASA's Johnson Space Center.
Maintain the airspeed as well as fly the vehicle.
It's 290 knots. It's coming down fine. Do we lower the gear?
Do we have it now?
Yeah, go ahead and lower the gear.
Affirmative.
Gear's coming
Okay,
down.
you can download now.
Gear's down and locked.
Start pull up. Pull up now.
Okay.
Okay, the gear down.
Okay. Gear's down.
Okay. A little bit faster. You can do it smoothly.
Okay.
Okay, now just aim for the runway.
All right. There we go. Speed's a little bit much. Slow down. Gear down and locked. A little bit. Good. Not bad.
Catch on very quickly.
That was nice.
Very good.
I like that. Can I sign on? While we ponder space travel and contemplate life on other planets, we also face inescapable social problems here on Earth, which cloud our visions of the future. Famines and catastrophes have haunted the human condition throughout history, but these pale before the projections some make about the future. Under increasing pressure from runaway population growth, starvation could become commonplace. violence and the passions that lead to wars could multiply to the detriment of all mankind. The flagrant overuse of resources could strip the earth of its bounty. Rampant, unplanned growth could deplete energy reserves and smother our farmland, aggravating hunger and poverty. A future gone awry, where life is devalued and hope is extinct. A bleak scenario, but not impossible. That we can threaten the very survival of nature's largest creation, the whale, is perhaps a symbol of our lack of reverence for the future.
Over the years you swam the ocean, following feelings on your own, and now you are washed up on the shoreline. I can see your body lie. It's a shame you have to die to put the shadow on our bridges over the foam. Wind on the water, carry me home.
To learn to appreciate the diversity of life on the planet, both non-human life, which we have to protect because it supplies us with all kinds of services which we need, even if you don't want to protect it for its own sake or for its aesthetic values. You've got to remember that the ecological systems of our planet maintain the quality of the atmosphere. They give us all the food from the sea. They recycle our waste. They recycle the nutrients that the plants have to have. If we don't have those systems functioning, we're dead as a civilization. And we have to learn to value the diversity of human beings, their physical diversity, their intellectual diversity, their cultural diversity, and so on. If we learn to do those things, then I think there is some hope of coming through the inevitable series of disasters that are going to face us over the next few decades. We're coming through it without a world war and with a vision of a better world beyond.
Life oughtn't to be dull either. Mankind has always lived in an atmosphere of risk, and we don't want to reduce that to zero. And I keep thinking that if we ever do achieve this stasis civilization, that we will then need space exploration as man's opening to risk and danger, as a place where people can go to have the kind of civilization where growth is still possible and where dangers can still be run. And perhaps then mankind will expand out into space, and Earth will serve as his fundamental basis for a new society, one that can spread out endlessly. And perhaps only then will mankind really reach his goal in all that he's been striving toward for all these millions of years, both as man and as whatever came before him.
I'm interested right now in just one problem. I want humankind to be here because I know what they can do. I've watched people way back in the Stone Age. I've seen them change in one generation and enter the modern world. I know what they can do. There haven't any doubt that we can solve these problems if we're here.
Life began in the sea, and its shimmering expanses draw us still. We are humbled by our grandeur. Of all the species that have existed on Earth, only one has had the potential of fulfilling nature's promise or destroying her work. We stand simultaneously at the thresholds of triumph and cataclysm. Nature, in her infinite patience, will one day measure whether man's intelligence was his undoing or his glory.